Welcome, welcome, everybody. Come forth if you dare. The front seats, But you know what? It was always said that if there is a seat here and a seat there, they're never empty. Always there's someone sitting there. See, I get a nod. We know that this is true. So just so you know, if the latecomers, we know there's going to be some latecomers, and you'll be, oh, wait, there's some, okay, they floated off. You can sit there now. You never know. Who knows? Man, we're kind of heavy on this side. Whoa. Okay. Oh, that's all right. You guys have personalities to fill, right? Yeah, we're good. Great. And then we also welcome our people online. Yay, very exciting. And what's also wonderful is that we happen to have someone who is celebrating a birthday, and they're streaming and enjoying this time. So shout out to you. Yes, that's, you. And we also are so delighted because this, everybody, is the 85th house concert for Story Crossroads. And yes, those online, we do accept applause and emojis and so forth. So, you can celebrate that way as well. Don't be shy. Sometimes I know you guys are shy, even though I know you're watching. And what's exciting is that with Story Crossroads, we are actually going to celebrate our 10th Summit and Festival in May of 2025. Can you believe it? 10 years. That's huge. And we're going to actually be unveiling very soon an updated logo for Story Crossroads. Because guess what? Our current logo, we still put on t-shirts, but it doesn't always print the best. Every year when we have to print t-shirts, the printer's like, you have these gradients. You got to do something about that. So we thought, well, we're going on our 10th year, plus it will make the printers happy that we're going to do that. So if you're part of our Story Crossroads e-newsletter, you might already know this, but it will go out again in the next day, and you can vote. You can say which of the two logos that you're interested in. And so we will see what people want to do, and by November 5th, you have to turn in your votes for the Story Crossroads logo. Yes, I know. And then what's exciting is that we also continue to get funding from all over the place. So every year, ever since we've started, we've gotten funding from Utah Humanities. We've gotten funding from the Utah Division of Arts Museums. We have gotten funding from the Western States Arts Federation, which just changed their name to Creative Arts. I believe that's what it is. I'm still learning, so please forgive me if you're connected to them. And we also continuously get funding from the Zoo Arts and Parks of Salt Lake County. I know we're not in Salt Lake County right now, but a lot of what we do is, and a lot of that comes because of ZAP. In fact, if you are voting, please vote yes for ZAP. Every 10 years, it has to be renewed. It's been around for a few decades now, but it's still up to us. And so really 1 cent out of like $10 that's spent in the state of Utah, specifically Salt Lake County, goes towards the arts. So just so you know, in case you know people in Salt Lake County and say, yes to ZAP. And we are also thrilled because we do things year-round. Besides the house concerts, we also have virtual workshops. And so every month we have a virtual workshop. We have one coming up on November 2nd. And that's going to be with Tim Lowry. He's going to be teaching crafting a personal tale. So if that's been something just kind of, I got to do that, you have a chance. And there's so many topics that are throughout that. Now, I have to admit, I stalled a little bit because I knew some people were coming a little bit later, but that's okay. We need to get started. We are anxious to hear from Bradley. Now, I have to say his last name is different. It's spelled the same. But he has discovered in his travels with his family history that they've been saying their last name possibly wrong. And he is going to fix that going forward. And so before for a time it was Mackay, and then for a while it was Mackay, but now Bradley has learned that it's actually Mackay. So I'm going to instead introduce, when we have the Unnatural Lives, Tales of the Undead, told by Bradley Mackay.
Thanks, Rachel. Hello, I'm Bradley Mackay now. I've kind of become the de facto Halloween story guy for Story Crossroads, which I'm really happy about. But even in April, before we knew that I'd be doing the Halloween concert, my wife said, start writing a scary story now. You're going to be too stressed later. So my whole year is basically Halloween. Anything that happens, any good life experience or anything I come across, I hold it in my hands and I say, how can I make this creepy? So I've got some fun stories for you guys tonight. The theme is unnatural lives, basically zombies, but what if they weren't eager to eat your brains? How would people adapt to an undead person working at the grocery store, for example? And I've got 3 stories for you. 2 of them are original pieces, and one of them is heavily adapted, but it is based on an Iroquois story called The Dead Wife. We have our late comers. You guys are just in time. I literally was stalling for you. Yeah, whatever spot you're on. Yeah. So, my first story for you is going to take us over to Europe, early 1800s, if you will. Imagine yourself living in a crowded city block, cobblestone streets, street lights that are lit with fire, not electricity yet. You're with your neighbors outside, the workday has been finished, and you hear the wheels of a wooden handcart churning against the cobblestones. You look and you see a pale peddler pulling his handcart down your street. The torchlights are casting shadows all across the tightly packed housing block. And he comes closer, his spine hunched, and he sets his cart down in the middle of the street. You and your neighbors stop to look at this man. He uncurls his spine, sets down the cart, and when you look at him, you feel unsettled. He has beady black eyes. His skin is pale and sickly like candle wax. He's tall and wiry like a bird, and yet he stands imposingly, which is undeserved for someone of his low station. For you know this man. This is the sexton. This is the person who you have paid to bury your friends, your parents, some of you, your children. None of you want to see this man. He's the only person's business who you could afford, so you tolerate him as you must. He sets the cart down, and he looks now that he has everyone's attention, and he says, "My friends, give me a moment of your time. I have discovered a miracle, and it is a miracle that will slowly change the world. You will revile it at first. It will shock you for a time, but it will slowly make its way into your homes and into your hearts. So please gather around." You and the neighbors do, looking close at what he's doing. He grabs the heavy cloth covering the back of the handcart and lifts it up. Some of your neighbors who are closer react before you do. They gasp. They say, "Oh, how could you? You cannot bring that here. What a cruel joke." And others say, "There are children here." But all you see is a pair of 2 pale feet, motionless, sticking out the back of the handcart. The neighborhood is growing in their outrage, but the pale peddler lifts his hand and he says, "Give me just a moment of your time." Curiosity takes the reins from the town, and they watch patiently as the peddler makes a gesture towards the back of the cart. Nothing happens. But then you notice it. You see the 2 feet from the back of the cart twitch. Next, you see a pale hand grab onto the side of the cart, and slowly it hoists itself up. First the torso, then the head. The corpse gently hops out the back of the handcart and walks to the side of the pale peddler. "No longer will your dead be buried in the ground to be food for worms. No longer will your dead be burned and their ashes collected in a dirty jar. No longer need you be afraid for life after death. This miracle that I have discovered will change the world, but tonight is only for introductions. This service will be yours for a humble fee, but the time to sell is not now, but it will be coming soon. But you and the rest are not ready to accept such a thing. In outrage, you stand up to the pale peddler and you say, the laws of men, the laws of God, and the laws of common decency say you are doing something evil and wrong. We will not accept this. You will get out of our street, and if we ever see you again, you will regret it. You've made an enemy of the pale peddler. He locks eyes with you, and he smiles, and he says, oh, we'll see. He curls his spine back up, makes a gesture, and the corpse obediently returns itself to the back of the handcart. He picks it up, and he goes on his way down the street. You and your neighbors stand in the middle of the street watching him as his silhouette melts into the shadows. You hear your neighbors discuss, there's new evil in the world, buying the dead. Can you imagine? You're all unsettled, but you're united in your indignation against such a thing. That night, the pale peddler made his way to your governor. They argued back and forth over the legality of such a trade that this might be. Who owns the bodies? Is it the person who was family before they died, or is he now the owner because you paid him to bury it in his property? They go back and forth on such a thing, and whether through persuasion or blackmail, maybe a little bit of the both, the pale peddler leaves the meeting with the governor with laws protecting the trade of the undead and property rights exclusive to him for this practice. The next night, you and your neighbors are again in your street, and you hear the churning of the wheels of the pale peddler, and you are indignant. You know what he's bringing around, and you do not want it. You go in your home, you find anything that would work for a makeshift weapon, a rolling pin, a pitchfork, whatever you have. Your neighbors come out in a mob, but then you stop in your tracks. The pale peddler is now escorted by 6 city guards, each with pikes and swords and weapons much more threatening than your rolling pin. So you back off and put it down. The pale peddler sets down his cart, he uncurls his spine, looks at you, makes his gesture, and 4 undead now obediently trot themselves out the back of his handcart. And now the peddler says, countrymen, the laws that protected you while you are alive now also protect you now that you are dead. And he shows to the side of his handcart an official seal of business. There's no more refuting that he has the right to this practice. And he reminds you, give me a moment of your time. This miracle will be yours for a humble fee, but the time to sell is not yet, but coming soon. You once again stand up. You get close to him, but not too close, as the city guard begins to hold you back, and you tell him, laws of men may change, but the laws of God and the laws of common decency will not. This is an ugly and a reviling practice, and we will not stand for it. Once again, the peddler looks you in the eye, and he smiles, and he says, oh, we'll see. He makes his gesture. The bodies file themselves back into the handcart once again. He curls his spine, picks up the cart, and is on his way. The marching feet of the city guard escorting him until the whole entourage melts into the shadow of the night. You and your townsmen stand once again. This time the conversation is a little bit different. They say, oh yeah, of course, we would never do such a thing. No. But then some of them ask, could I really have my Eleanor back? And another one says, my Tim. I haven't thought of it before, but I've been thinking of it now. You stand up to them again and say, can you hear yourselves? Do you see what he is doing? This is not something you should ever have to consider. This is not something he should be able to sell you, even. Go back to your homes. And ashamed, most of them look down. They all go their separate ways, a little less resolute than before. That night, the peddler makes a different stop to the matriarch of the church. They have a very interesting conversation, going back and forth over the morality of bringing the dead back to life. Was it something God ever intended? And if God was going to do it, isn't he grateful that I'm helping, perhaps? They also wonder if the spirit leaves the body and you're worried about us repurposing those bodies. Isn't that a lack of faith on your part? Do you not believe your spirit really goes to heaven? If you do, why do you have a problem with such a thing? They argue back and forth, and whether through good persuasion, a bit of blackmail of taking this miracle to the rival congregation, allowing them the credit, he leaves that meeting with undead employed as incense bearers in the church, the next church meeting going over life after death, and the spirit leaving the body, and God being a God of miracles. The next night, you hear the churning of the wheels, and you know all too well what is about to happen. But no longer is the pale peddler pulling the handcart. There's a donkey pulling the front of the handcart. And the handcart is adorned with sacred red cloth with the insignia of the church right next to his license of business. He's escorted both by living clergymen, who is leading the donkey, undead clergymen carrying incense, and then the city guards, all escorting the entourage. This whole group stops in the middle of your street. The pale peddler once again hops out and raises his arms and says, "My brothers and sisters in the Lord, give me a moment of your time. Miracles abound. No longer need you fear your loved ones being fed to worms. You can keep them close, ready for when God is ready to send their spirits back to you. Miracles are here, and they will soon be yours for a humble fee, but the time to sell is not now, but is coming soon." In outrage, you reach out. But one of your neighbors, a woman who lost a child long ago, comes up to the peddler, shaking. He turns to her, puts his cold, clammy hands on top of hers, and says, "My dear, you look like you've lost someone. Is that true?" Tears begin to stream down her face as she nods. "I did. My little one, my little Eliza." And he says, "You are certainly deserving, and I have something just for you." He snaps his fingers. One of the adult undead goes to the back of the cart and helps a much smaller figure off the back. They hold each other's hands as they slowly walk, faces blank as if they're sleeping, towards the mother. She shakes as she bends down to the familiar height, and she holds the child. She says, "It's cold." And the pale peddler says, "But she's yours again. Take her, and let everyone around you know that miracles abound and that your faith is strongest first." He leaves a city guard to attend them just in case the neighbors got aggressive or uncomfortable with it. The mother went inside and comes back out holding the child in a blanket as it stares blankly into the sky. He reminds everyone the time to sell is not now, but is coming soon. And when it does, you better act quickly. And the whole procession proceeds down your street and melts into the shadow of the night. You and your neighbors gather around and stare at this mother holding the child. She looks exactly like you remember her. Her expression's a little blank. It's almost like at a funeral when you look at the body and you expect it's going to move, right? And it does, just slowly, but almost as if there's no life in it, like a puppet. Some of the neighbors are happy, and they put their hands through her hair like the mother did. Your kids have played with her before, and now she's back. But you stand up and you say, "Don't you see what the peddler is doing? He is getting us used to this. There's undead living among us today, just one. Tomorrow it may be more. We're getting comfortable with this, but it doesn't make it right." The mother weeps and takes the child inside. The city guard follows her. Some people look ashamed at your words, but others look mad at you. They look at you and say, "How dare you? Do you see the pain that you caused?" Another one says, "By your fruits ye shall know them, and I see the fruits of hatred in you, ignorance and hatred. Everyone leaves to their homes, and you're left in the middle of the street wondering, what just happened? What is happening? That night, the pale peddler makes a very different visit. He goes to all of the businessmen of the city, and this visit is much different than the others because there is no arguing back and forth. He walks into the room and says, "How would you like a workforce you do not need to pay?" Sold. So instead that evening, they discussed logistics, timelines, supply and demand. How soon can we get all of the dead of this place back up and working? What kind of jobs can they do? And then most importantly, we need a better name for these things. Because you see, there's already such ugly terms coming up. Undead, zombies, and it just evokes something that we don't quite like. It's threatening, it's negative, it's ugly. So they were very proud of themselves when they chose the word pallid, which typically means something that is very pale. And they laughed at themselves that it kind of sounded like pale invalid, and was sure that would catch on. And so the new word was put around everywhere before the other ones could take on. And you see, it's much more difficult to be afraid of a pallid than a zombie, right? So the word was propagated throughout, and then a lot of changes started to take place in the city. All of a sudden, they're everywhere. There's a pallid working at the market. There's pallids working as valets for the ballet. There are pallids in homes as comfort, everywhere you could think of, but mostly employed by the businessmen. And the next time the peddler comes down your street, no longer does he have a poor man's handcart. No longer is there a donkey pulling this handcart, but it is a finely crafted carriage gilded with gold and pulled by 2 white stallions. There's a whole entourage of city guard, clergymen. There is fanfare and a whole parade of pallids behind the now pallid peddler. As he goes down your street, this time, however, he does not stop. Through the window of the carriage, he says, "Give me a moment of your time. The time to sell is soon." And he leaves. And the town gathers, and they say, "What does he mean by that? He wouldn't sell our dead to someone else, would he? That'd be preposterous." And all of a sudden, in the mayhem, as they went, and as they saw people from other columns of the city go, they ran in a frenzy, everyone trying to claim their dead before it was too late. And you're left in the middle of the street alone, wondering what happened. Time goes on. Soon your job is replaced by a pallid, as it's much easier to afford one of those than you, and they did the work just as well. You're getting desperate as food becomes scarce at your table. But then you hear that the peddler is accepting visitors, people who are struggling like you. And though it goes against every fiber of your being to see that man, after what he'd done both to the culture of your city and to yourself financially, you're left with no other options. You go to the pallid peddler's office, which is now extravagant. The finest furniture as soon as you go inside. And before you enter his office, the person before you leaves, and you see a look in his eyes, an emptiness, a thoughtfulness, a hope mixed with despair that you hadn't seen quite before. As he goes, you enter in the office. You turn the knob, and you see the peddler. The peddler is now very fat. He has gotten wildly successful and has let it show. He sits up at his desk when he sees you, and he says, "Ah, you. At last, I remember you. Well, come on in, please. Give me a moment of your time." And he sits down at the desk. That was the sound of the chair squeaking because he's so big. It just popped the wood. So you sit down, and he says, "I hear you're in a tough situation. Now, I have a proposition for you." And he pulls out a contract. And he says, "You are not making a living. You came here to make one. And I am in an interesting situation where my supply and demand isn't quite as frequent as I would like it to be. So, the deal is this. You sign away however many years of your life as you would like. I will pay you for those years, and when the agreed upon time comes, you will turn into a pallid in my service." And all of a sudden, the peddler's plans become clear to you. From the first night, he wanted not only to become Lord of the dead, he has now become the Lord of the living. And you shake your head as he laughs, as you sign away decades of your life to the pallid peddler. Well, thank you. This next story is a bit of a new style for me, so I'm just going to kind of see how it goes. Our main character for this story, oh, hold on. Bye, little guy. Those fresh ones are sure cute. Okay, so this is a story about Britannia. Britannia was wearing a sharp white blazer with business slacks. She was inside an old renovated therapy office. There was nice white furniture everywhere, neutral palette colors. It just looked really nice, really clean, which was really at odds of what you might expect for a psychic's office to look like. Britannia was a psychic, a gypsy through heritage, and she had the gift, but not like the others. She had the real gift. She could summon spirits, see them, and talk to them. She didn't need to pretend by playing with a crystal ball. She didn't need little cards that may or may not be rigged. She had the real deal. But she was also on a mission because she wanted to change how everyone thought about psychics or mediums. Because everyone, you have a picture in your mind when I say a psychic. Like, hey, do you want to go see a psychic together? Right? Something comes up. She wanted to change that. She wanted it to become a respectable trade, a respectable business. So her office was tidy, it was clean, it had motivational posters on the wall like, women can do anything, nothing is impossible. She inherited the building from like a feminist pro group previously. But she's like, posters work, they're nice, they're great, I'm gonna keep them up there, it's beautiful. She still had like a crystal ball in the corner, but it's just like hey, this is what we do. It's not on the table, she doesn't use it. So she's looking over everything looks nice, everything looks neat, her blazer is tight, her ponytail is even tighter, and she is ready for this day, except for she looks up and the ceiling fan that is going is squeaking. And Britannia is one of those people who cannot tolerate irritable, tiny, repetitive noises. She looks up at it and she's like, okay, well, I can't turn off the ceiling fan because it's gonna be too hot in here, and ding dong, the bell to her office rings. So she goes, okay, I'm just gonna, all right. She goes to the door. She opens the door, and the painter is there. He's like, hey, I've got your high contrast paints. Where do you want them? And she says, just put them in the side room over there. I'll look at them in a minute. And he goes, wow, that smells of eucalyptus. And she goes, yes, essential oils. Nice, aren't they? Go ahead and just put the paints right over in there. So he does so, she signs, and as he leaves, he closes the door. She opens the paints real quick, because she's like, she just doesn't trust that other people do their jobs right. She opens it, and it's the wrong color. And she's so upset about this, but alas, she doesn't have time for it right now. She's running her hand through her ponytail, making sure she's crisp, because she has a lot of important clients today. Her first day on the job, and she wants to make sure it goes perfectly. All right, she's gonna do something about that fan. She grabs a stepladder, pulls it up. She doesn't have butter or anything. She's not a handy woman, right? She doesn't know what to do. So she grabs the bottle of eucalyptus essential oils, and she's like, oil it, grease it. It shouldn't be squeaky, right? This'll work. She gets up to the top, is starting to put it on when, ding dong. She pours the whole bottle of eucalyptus oil all over herself. Okay. She gets down from the ladder, hurry, and puts it away. She has to make a good impression, but there's a huge stain all over her blazer, and there's no time to cover it. So naturally, she just puts her hand there. She goes over to the door, opens it, and says, hello, welcome to the modern medium. I'm so happy you're here. Please come in. Doreen, is it? Yes, please, thank you. Come on and take a seat. They sit down in their chairs, very comfortably, and it says, Doreen, I have a gift. I could summon anyone that you would like to see. Please tell me who that is. Also, have you filled out your forms? And she goes, oh, no. Give me a minute. Okay. She pulls out a pen, looks at the words, gets some glasses. Doreen, let me just take that pen, okay? You could fill that out later. That is totally fine. Just read it over. Who did you want to see? Chauncey. He was an old flare. Thank you. Okay, great. You know, I'm just... Okay, I can't focus in here. I'm just go in the other room. Thank you. And I'll just do it. She heads over into the other room where the stepladder and the paint was stored, and she collects herself like, oh, okay, just keep it together. It's fine. Okay. She focuses, and immediately, a pink translucent, usually it's blue, we're going to do pink today. A pink translucent ghost appears before her of a fellow named Chauncey, and she says, Chauncey, is that you? And he goes, yeah, hello. She goes, hi, I have someone here. I have summoned you to talk to them, to comfort them and answer any of their questions. Okay. She goes, how does a ghost smack its lips? I don't understand. She heads back out, and the ghost trails behind her, and she goes, Doreen, I have a... Now, hang on. Now, I don't understand this part of the form. Can you help me? She's tapping her fingers on the table. The fan is still going, and okay, yeah, sure, yeah, what part? And she says, actually, can you ask Chauncey, I can't remember where we used to live, and I needed to put an address on here. And Chauncey goes, well, yeah, see, I can't remember. It's been so long. And so Britannia just goes, he can't remember. And she goes, well, that doesn't sound like a psychic. You're supposed to get the answers, aren't you? Drumming her fingers on the counter. Okay, Chauncey, where did you live? Well, I think it was Elm Street. Elm Street, Britannia says Elm Street. Here, let me just, I'll write that for you. Elm Street, thank you. What did you want to talk to Chauncey about? And she goes, well, you know, I always wanted to know why he left me for Heather. Chauncey goes, I don't know. I don't know. Britannia goes, Chauncey, I need something a little more than that. You know, my client is expecting a real answer. And he goes, she was brunette. Sorry, she was brunette is all he says. And she goes, well, hold on, well, I was brunette. You know, I don't think you're talking to a real person there. I'm gonna leave. And she grabs her stuff and Britannia says, no, wait, well, hold on, that's what he told me. And she leaves, she exits the door. She comes back in and says, by the way, it really smells of eucalyptus in here. And I mean, it really smells like eucalyptus in here. And she closes the door. Britannia is a little flustered. That did not go as well as she hoped. She turned around to Chauncey and said, you know, you were less than helpful. Now, please, just go, would you please? Would you go? And he went, where? How? You brought me here. And she goes, oh, I did not think about this part. She knew how to summon spirits. She did not know how to send them back from whence they came. She went over into the side room and kicked over a bucket of paint. It spilled all over the floor, and her shoes were covered. She went, oh, no, not right now. She pops off her shoes and leaves them. It's fine. She's just going to be barefoot. It's going to be a naturalist thing. That's pretty modern, right? Okay, she says, okay, Chauncey, you really got to go. I really can't tolerate all the... Tolerate what? Don't. Okay, ding dong. She goes, just stay in here, okay? Would you please? And she goes outside to the... and just goes to the door and opens it, covering this, trying to hide her bare feet as best she can. And she says, hello, welcome to Modern Medium. So happy to have you. Please come on in. Okay, and what is your name? My name is Sarah Beth. Okay, thank you, Sarah Beth. Well, come take a seat, just right there. You know, it smells like eucalyptus in here. And she says, yes, I know. No. It really smells like eucalyptus in here. She said, thank you, I know. Now, please, take a seat. Don't worry about the form. We're going to skip the forms today. It's fine. So tell me, who did you want to talk to today? And she says, oh, you know, there was a local celebrity named Ethan Drake where I grew up. I would like to just pick at his brain. Can you bring back anybody? Do I have to be related? And Britannia goes, no, a celebrity, that's fun. That's so good. Let me go get him. What was that? Nothing. It's fine. Okay. She goes off over into the side room to focus where, hey, you spilled paint on the floor. I know. Thank you, Chauncey. Please be quiet. Boom. Another pink translucent figure appears who looks like Elvis, but a little different. This is Ethan Drake. And she goes, Ethan, goodness, thanks you're here. Well, that's a handsome fella. Now, quiet, Chauncey. Quiet. You know what? Just come on out here. We're just going to answer questions right out there. It's fine. So they go out. She sits down at the table. Both the spirits are there to her great annoyance. Chauncey sounds like he's chewing bubble gum, which should not be possible when you're dead, but it is there, and there's the ceiling fan, but she takes a deep breath. Okay, what is your first question? And she says, ask him what his biggest dream was. And she relays the question, Ethan Drake, what was your biggest dream? And he goes, you know, I always really wanted to be an ice skater, a figure skater. I really did. And she goes, it turns out he wanted to be a figure skater. And Sarah Beth goes, what? No, he didn't. No, he was a musician. What are you talking about? He looks over at Ethan Drake and Chauncey, goes, yeah, that's right. I heard his music. He's a musician. She goes, Ethan Drake, did you want to be a figure skater? Yes, he says. Like, he says he really did. And she goes, no, that's not right. Well, you know, let me ask another question. Who was his first wife? She relays the question. Ethan Drake goes, Julie Andrews. She relays the answer, and she goes, no. I don't think you're a real psychic. That doesn't sound right at all. These are just wrong answers. And so she leaves, and Britannia is just so frustrated. She's like, what is wrong with these? Ethan Drake, why did you say those things? And Chauncey goes, I think I figured it out. Ask him what color the sky is. Do it. So Britannia goes, all right. Ethan Drake, what is the color of the sky? Purple. Oh, no. You're a compulsive liar, aren't you? And he goes, no. Oh, this is just great. You know what? Both of you just need to leave. There's and then the lies, you know, I can't take this anymore, okay? So she shuffles him off into the side room and falls all the way into the paint that had spilled all over the floor. She slowly gets up, dripping black paint all over her back, from the back of her head. She looks around. Ethan Drake goes, you look great. You look real great. And she goes, shut it. And then she hears the ding dong. So she goes over to the door, opens it. Hello, welcome to the Modern Medium, a safe place for psychic practices. Please come in. And her guest goes, it smells like eucalyptus. She goes, I know. No, it really smells like eucalyptus. She says, thank you, please, that's fine. Just come sit down, please. So she sits. Aren't you going to sit too? No, I'm going to. No, I'm not. So she stands there and says, tell me who you are here to see. Meanwhile, Chauncey comes by and goes, now that's a pretty person right there. Can you ask her name for me? No. And then Ethan Drake is looking over at the Women Can Do Anything poster and the Everything is Possible poster and goes, I think these are good messages. Wow, a chauvinist on top of it all. Great. So she starts to ask the questions, like, okay, who did you want to see today? And please have it be a normal, close family person who is sane. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but please do that. She goes, I would like to see my sister Samantha. She goes, oh, okay, perfect. I could do that. Thank you. Just wait here for just a moment. And Ethan Drake goes, I knew a few Samanthas. Shut up, Ethan Drake. She goes over into the side room, careful of all the paint, going backwards the whole way as to not show her back. And then in that room, she goes, okay, please, just a normal, sane person, no irritating quirks, please. And there's Samantha, who looks like this. Hi, Samantha. What? Sorry. If there was one thing Britannia could not stand more than irritating sounds, more than clicky pens, more than lip smacking or compulsive liars, it was a mumbler. And she got one. She got one. It's right here. It was such a good day. She said, oh, you know what, Samantha? Your name is Samantha, right? What? This is what I've been called forever. Thank you. Okay, great. You know what? We're all going to go. And Chauncey goes, you know, that woman does not have a lot of self-confidence. Thank you. So they go out into the hall, and she says, okay, I have Samantha here, and she is going to answer your questions. Please, what did you want to know? And she says, you know, I wanted to know why my sister never called. You know, we went so long without ever talking to each other. So she looks at Samantha and says, Samantha, why did you never call? I think it was her fault. Sorry, what did you say? I said, no, I think it was her fault. Just a second, dear. She goes back into the side room. Samantha, you need to talk. I cannot understand a word you are saying. Please, talk. And she goes, okay. So they go back out. She says, okay, she's ready to answer your question now. I promise. You know, see, it's just a crazy day. There's a lot of spirits here, okay? Not that you need to be scared. It's normal, but it's okay, all right? Okay. So Samantha, why didn't you call? I really just, from the moment that you did that with Mom, and I don't know, I just really didn't feel like it. She was losing her mind. She says, Chauncey, do you know what she's saying? And Chauncey goes, no, I really don't have a clue. But she kept going on mumbling. And then Ethan Drake says, oh, she said because she was mad at her for killing the cat. And she goes, oh, she's mad at you for killing her cat. And she goes, I don't have a cat. What are you talking about? She went, Ethan! Oh, no, I should not have listened to Ethan. And she goes, you know what? So I came here vulnerable, and you're making a joke of this, and I don't want to, so I'm going to leave. Britannia goes, no, please, no. And then she leaves the door. She turns around. She hears the Chauncey going, Ethan Drake acknowledging the women can do anything, nothing is impossible posters, just shaking his head, and she loses it. She says, you mumble too much. You're a compulsive liar. You make sounds you shouldn't be able to. She just loses it. She runs around trying to swat the ghost. She goes and grabs her shoes from the other room and throws them at stupid Ethan Drake, and it just splats over on the posters and on the wall and everything. There is black paint all over this room, and it looks like a mess. She grabs the crystal ball and she throws it over on the floor, and it shatters everywhere. She goes over by the front door, taking a few deep breaths, when ding dong, what? The person looks in, gets a heavy dose of eucalyptus, sees stains all over this woman, black paint all over her, and posters on the wall that now say, women can do nothing. And she leaves. Britannia closes the door, starts to cry a little bit, and then Ethan Drake says, well, that went well. Fine. Okie dokie, I've got one more for you, and it looks like we're going to be perfect on time, which is so great. So, this one is from Andrew Lang's storytelling book. It's based on an Iroquois story called The Dead Wife. I've kind of heavily adapted it. I've transplanted it into a culture I'm more familiar with, Polynesian cultures. And I also kind of tweaked the ending. So it's more like one of those based on a true story kind of things. You know, like the ones where it's like, This movie is he goes to the grocery store and aliens attack, and the true story part is he went to the grocery store. It's kind of like that. It's like there's a lot that was there, but it's like changed now. So it's still a lot The Dead Wife, but it's a little different. But I hope you'll still enjoy it. The wind was the only sound at Lagi's funeral. It rustled her hair into Alofa's arms, who was holding her one last time. The boat rocked gently with the waves, and he tied back her hair with a tiare flower to keep it still. He looked at the features of her face, memorizing them as best as he could, and then said his goodbyes. He wrapped her up in cloth, and then he took that bundle and weighted it down with heavy stones before gently laying it into the ocean. And he watched the ripples of the water until he could no longer see the color distortion of her funeral bag as it sank down to the depths. And he was okay. He was fine all the way rowing back to shore. He was fine unloading the canoe and storing it away. And he was fine going all the way back to his hut. But when he ducked under the thatch roof, when he saw her clothes lying there, when he could smell the coconut and vanilla that he associated with her, he wasn't okay anymore. And he wept. He woke up in the same spot on the ground, but needed to get on with his days. But the days were hard because everything reminded him of her. Everything reminded of her when she was there, whenever he passed her clothes, whenever he passed her wood carving station where she would spend the nights just carving wood, he would think of her. But everything also reminded him of her absence, like when he would wake up in the middle of the night and roll over, expecting his arm to land on her waist, and instead falling through to nothing. Or he would think of her absence when he would come home from a hunt, and all the chores that she used to do were no longer done. The fire was not lit, the wood was not put away, nothing was done. And so he had to assume all of that. And all the things that reminded him of her and reminded him that he no longer had her started to compound into this big ball of grief that made its home in his heart right where Lagi used to live. And soon that grief grew into panic. One night he was home alone, couldn't get everything done that he needed to, was behind, and started to shake. His breathing grew quick and shallow. He started to sweat. His vision was getting blurry, and on his hands and knees, his arms were shaking. He felt like there was a monster he couldn't see on all sides of him with teeth trying to get him. Loneliness. And it was a loneliness that he couldn't shake, and he was so terrified. He crawled over in the night wailing, just saying, Lagi, Lagi. And then he stumbled on her wood carving tools, and he held on to them tightly. Anything that reminded him of her, it staved off that monster of loneliness just a little bit. And so he sat with those tools all night. He was no carver like Lagi, but he carved wood just to hear the sounds, anything that used to be there when Lagi was there. And then eventually he got an idea. He realized he could not do this alone, and he needed someone or something. So he made a doll. A wooden doll that was approximately the size of Lagi, both her shape and her height, as best as he was able to realize it through carving. He spent all night carving the wood, creating delicate wooden hands and arms. In the end, it looked like one of those posable mannequins that you see on the front of an art book, but a little rougher. He wasn't quite a skilled carver. And he left the face blank, faceless. He was not very good at making faces and had no intention to ruin this doll. And besides, from the moment he met her, he had her face etched into his mind, so he could think of it whenever he needed to. And the doll gave him good company, and it staved off that monster of panic for quite some time. He felt more comfortable and confident, and he felt like he had a little piece of her close with him. He held that thing's hands and looked into its eyes and said, Lagi, please come back, please. He woke up in the same spot. The sun beat its rays down underneath the blanket that he was under. He opened up his eyes, pulled off the blanket, and looked around a bit confused. Nor did he remember putting a blanket on, but it had been a rough night. He looked over and remembered, I need to fish. I'm hungry. His stomach was growling. So he grabbed his equipment to hunt, but then he remembered the doll that he made last night. And he looked around for it, wondering, where did I... There it was. It was leaning up against a tree. He looked over from where the carving tools were to the tree. But then he remembered, I got a blanket put on me too. There's a lot I just don't remember about last night. So he goes and does a hunt for the day, and he stays out extra long because he doesn't want to go back to his place, to the loneliness that would be waiting for him there. But when he gets close to the home, he smells something. Smoke. He looks around and he sees that a fire has been lit. He looks around and sees that the wood has been chopped and put away and that Logi's other household chores were completed. And then he looks and he sees a woman. He sees a woman wearing Logi's clothes duck under into his home. He drops his hunt. He runs as fast as he can, barreling past the fire pit, his smile breaking onto his face. And he goes, Logi! Logi! And he ducks under the home, Logi! But there's no one there. The home was completely empty except for the doll that was propped up against the thatch walls of the home. The next day, the same thing happened. He went out on his hunt, and when he came back, fire was lit, wood put away, food prepared, other chores done, and then he sees a woman in Logi's dress stuck into the home. Once again, he drops his hunt. He dashes even faster this time, thinking maybe I'll catch her this time, and he goes inside, Logi! And again, there's nothing there. Just the doll, sitting cross-legged by his sleeping mat. The next day, he decides to catch this person. So he makes out as if to go hunt, but then hides in a bush nearby and stays and watches all day long, watching to see who was coming to do this for him. But he was watching for a long time. Eventually got really tired and he fell asleep at his post. And when he woke, there it was, the fire lit and the stuff put away, and he panicked and went, oh no, my mission, I was supposed to catch whoever was doing this. But then he looks and he sees the woman duck under his roof again. So he goes on in running and says, Logi, please wait. Nothing there. Just the doll sitting cross-legged in the middle of the room, exactly where he left it. That was not where he left the doll. He looks at it, faceless face facing towards him, and he starts to wonder. He gets down to its height. He puts his hand out to touch its face, and he asks, could it be? Logi? Are you there? The doll says nothing. It stares back at him, motionless. Logi? Alofa sits himself cross-legged across from the doll. He could sense something. He didn't know what it was, but he was sure it was Logi. So he sat there all night long, watching the doll, waiting for any sign of movement from it, seeing if it would start doing chores the next day. He sat there for hours, blinking as little as possible, but eventually his body gave out. He was so tired and so desperate that he grabbed its hands and put it through his hair, as he remembered Logi used to do. He put itself in its lap, and he fell asleep, saying, Logi, please come back to me. When he wakes up, he still feels Logi combing through his hair. And he looks up, and she's there. Logi is there, her islander skin, the smell of coconut and vanilla in her hair. She's there. And he perks up and he says, Logi, you're here. And she says, yes, the spirits had pity on you. And they have allowed me to come back, but only for a short time, Alofa. I can only be here for a short time. And he was so happy. He said, okay, please, yes. And he spent the whole night talking to her about everything that they would have talked about in all that time that she had passed and been buried in the sea. Eventually, though, he got too tired and he said, Logi, promise me you'll be here when I wake up. And she says, I promise, Alofa. Go to sleep. He falls asleep. And when he wakes up with the doll cradling his head, faceless face looming over him, he recoils back and he says, no, Logi, you promised you would stay here. Logi. He shouts and wails and he pounds the ground with his fists. He is furious, wondering if he imagined the whole experience. But then he remembered something. He thought, wait a minute. She's only ever been here at night. So he resolved to sleep through the day and at night see if she would be back, just to test his theory. So he did that, and when he woke up, Lagi was there, and he was right. And so they spent the whole day, the whole night together now. And from then on, he slept through the day and was awake only at night to spend as much time as possible as he could with her. One of those nights, they were over by the fire. It was burning, and he got really hungry, so he went over and grabbed a coconut, broke it open against a pike that was in the ground for just that purpose, and went back over. He held Lagi's hand and started to drink the coconut milk with the other when he felt a sharp pain in his finger. He looked, and Lagi was gone. The doll was in her place, and there was a splinter in his finger. He said, "No, Lagi, why did you go? Did I do something wrong?" The next night, the same thing happened. He went to eat some food, and then a splinter in his finger, and Lagi was gone. And on the third night, he had figured it out. And he thought, food. She's a spirit. If I eat food that binds me to this plane, I can't perceive her as well. So he stopped eating. And his once large Polynesian muscular frame started to dwindle and dwindle. He subsisted just off of coconut milk and the flesh of coconuts early in the mornings, right before he was ready to sleep, so that he could have as much time with Lagi as possible to stave off that loneliness that kept threatening to come back. Every time she turned into the doll, it was there to hunt him. The next night, he had been not eating for so long, and they were sitting by the fire, and he was getting so cold. It was in the off season. And he said, "Lagi, come on, let's go on into the home. It's really cold out here. We should go inside." And she looked at him. She stopped her singing that she was doing and just stared. And when he grabbed her hand to take her inside, he felt the into his finger. And once again, the doll was there, staring into him. And he thought, "No, Lagi, I don't understand." The next night, the same thing. It got cold. He tried to take her in, a splinter in his finger, and Lagi was gone. On the third night, he asked her, and she said, "I need to be under the stars. That is how the spirits come to this world. I need to be under the stars. If you take me in the home, I can't subsist in this plane." So he spent nights after nights after nights being outside, looking at her through the fire so the smoke would dance across her face. And after one of these nights, so much time had passed. He had grown hungry and tired, but he was happy. He was so happy to have her back. And he looked at through the fire, and Lagi said, "Alofa, it is time for me to go." And he said, "No, you can't go. Please." And he felt that panic starting to rise up inside him. And he said, "Please, I can't. I really can't. I need you." And she says, "It's okay. It's okay, Alofa." And she holds his hand. And as the fire dances across her face, she goes from being Lagi to the faceless doll, to Lagi to the faceless doll. And he says, What do you mean?" Lagi is gone. There's only the doll staring at him, and he hears her voice say, "Because you're coming with me." Alofa was found dead the next day. The people of the village, after not seeing him for a long time, went to check on him. And they saw a pale man, which wasn't what Alofa used to be. They saw a spindly little man, which is what Alofa didn't used to be. But believe it or not, it was not the lack of sunlight or the lack of food that had caused him to die, they concluded. It was actually from the cold. They looked, and they found that he'd been sleeping outside for an extended period of time without any fire. They looked at the fire pit, which had been completely overgrown. No flames to keep him warm, and so he froze to death, is what they concluded. They deemed it was from going mad of a lonely heart. And that answers some of my questions about the story. But what I'm not sure about is the way he was found. They found him all the way next to the carving tools, cradled in the arms of some wooden doll that smelled like coconut and vanilla. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Ooh, doesn't that make you rethink the undead or the spirits or those beyond, doesn't it? Let's have another round of applause to Bradley Mackay. And I know that we have people that are streaming. We do appreciate you. In fact, I know individual texts, even if you're shy with YouTube chats, I did get some feedback that you're getting the stream good and everything was wonderful. So I'm glad to hear that as well. Now, you might wonder, oh, I need to know when the next one is. Well, the good news is I know when the next one is, and it's even on our website. So if you get our bookmark here, you go to storycrossroads.org/one spelled out -stop, and there you can see what's upcoming, which makes it real easy for the next couple months. But the next one's going to be at my place, so you can come to West Jordan, Utah, or those streaming, hey, you can stream again, that's good, or you can, come to Utah, West Jordan. And we're going to have Jeff Driggs perform. He is telling tales of Sweet Home because, get this, he actually grew up in Sweet Home, Oregon. That was the name of the place. Now what's funny is that he now lives in Sugar House. So think about that. Sweet Home, and now he's in Sugar House of Utah. Well, he's going to just be a great delight, and you're welcome to come. It's a Wednesday night. We can jump around a little bit. So it is a Wednesday night, November 13th. And then we also have our December one, which will be Janine Evans. That will be in Salt Lake City. There'll be a Monday night, and that will be December 16th. She is going to be doing European Christmas stories from, it's going to be a lot of fun. So there's always different genres, different things to look forward to. But those of you who are here, you get to enjoy the wonderful refreshments. And, that's kind of the perks of in-person. Sorry for those streaming. But guess what? I know one of you's at a birthday party, so you already got some treats. I don't feel bad. You're fine. Now, the rest of you, I'm giving you permission. Go into your refrigerator, or maybe, you save the trick-or-treat candy or something. Just, you can pull some out now. It's okay. So go get a treat. Make sure that you can take part in all of this as well. And I'm going to then put a screen up so that you can see about Jeff's house concert that is coming up and putting it on your calendar. But again, we are thankful to the Mackays. Round of applause to Bradley, to everybody. Yay! And in case you're like, oh wait, I definitely need to donate, there's a few different signs. There's the Venmo option, or if you want other options than that, you can scan a QR code or even text. It'll give you an automatic link. For those streaming, you can see that already there is a QR code to get you to donate, as well as storycrossroads.org/donate. So yay!